A marriage born from desperation. A billionaire consumed by hate. A bride hiding a devastating secret when Ethan Montgomery, Manhattan's most ruthless CEO, is forced to marry Sophia Bennett, daughter of a disgraced businessman, vows to make her life a living hell. He sees her as nothing more than a gold digger who trapped him into a contract marriage. She's just another greedy woman chasing his fortune. But on their wedding night, everything changes. Greetings, fellow dreamers. This tale is filled with love, secrets, and a twist you'll never forget. Step into the tale. Manhattan blazed against the night sky, towers glowing like monuments to power and ambition. Inside the ballroom of Fifth Avenue's most exclusive hotel, crystal chandeliers scattered light across silk and champagne, casting golden shadows on faces trained to hide their true thoughts. Ethan Montgomery stood at the altar, jaw set, eyes like frozen steel. At 34, he had built an empire that made grown men nervous. Real estate, tech, finance. His handshake was a weapon. His silence, a threat. Tonight, in his tailored black tuxedo, he looked every bit the king forced to accept a political marriage. The woman walking toward him moved like a ghost through candlelight. Sophia Bennett, 27, with hair the color of dark honey and eyes that held autumn's sadness. Her gown shimmered, but she wore it like armor she didn't want. The guests saw a lucky girl marrying into billions. They didn't see the sacrifice. Her father had lost everything. Reckless deals, collapsed empires, desperation. To save his name, he had offered his daughter. And Sophia, watching her father's voice crack with shame, had said yes. Not for wealth. Not for herself. For him. Ethan saw none of this. He saw calculation. He saw the woman who had trapped him through contracts signed in boardrooms, far from his consent. Years ago, he had loved someone who left him for a richer man. That wound had never healed. It had hardened into something darker. The vows were spoken, mechanical and hollow, rings exchanged like business signatures. When Sophia finally looked up at him, searching for something human in his face, she found only contempt. "You have what you wanted," Ethan whispered as guests applauded, his breath cold against her ear. "Don't expect more." She lowered her gaze, not in submission, but to hide the tears burning behind her eyes. Around them, laughter and champagne flutes clinked in false celebration. Between them stretched a silence no words could cross. The reception blurred into faces and flashes. Reporters outside speculated about dowries and mergers. Inside, Sophia smiled for cameras while dying inside. Ethan played his role perfectly, the confident groom, while rage simmered beneath his skin. When the final dance ended, he escorted her to the waiting limousine, his hand firm on her arm. Not gentle. Possessive. Cameras exploded with light. Voices shouted their names. But inside the car, silence suffocated them both. He adjusted his cufflinks with precision, ignoring her completely. She folded her hands in her lap, the diamond ring heavy as a shackle. The car slid through Central Park West, city lights cutting across their faces like broken glass. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice sharp enough to draw blood. "Let's make one thing clear. This isn't a marriage. This is business. You'll play your role in public. Beyond that, expect nothing." Sophia opened her mouth and closed it. Words would only build the wall higher. But something in her reflection caught his attention. He expected triumph. Instead, her eyes held only sorrow, deep and unspoken. It unsettled him. She didn't fit the picture he had painted, and that made her dangerous. The penthouse loomed ahead, glass and steel piercing the night sky. As they stepped into the elevator, the numbers climbed steadily. With each floor, they rose toward a truth neither was ready to face. The doors opened to silence and cold marble. Ethan walked ahead without looking back. Sophia followed, her heart pounding. Knowing that everything she feared was about to begin, the penthouse stretched before them like a museum, all sharp edges and cold perfection. Floor 2 ceiling windows framed the glittering city below, but Sophia felt no beauty in it. Only distance. Only isolation. Ethan loosened his tie, his broad shoulders tight with anger barely restrained. He poured himself whiskey, without offering her anything, the crystal glass catching light like a warning. "You should understand something," he said, turning to face her. His voice was calm, controlled, lethal. "I despise arrangements. I despise being forced. And I despise the person who thought she could enter my life through deals struck behind closed doors." The words hit her like physical blows. Sophia's hands trembled, but she clasped them together, refusing to let him see how deeply he cut. "I didn't choose this either," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast room. Ethan's laugh was bitter, sharp. "Don't insult me with innocence. Your father needed saving, and you saw your chance. A lifetime secured in one evening. Congratulations." She wanted to scream. To tell him the truth, that she had given up everything. Her dreams, her freedom, her hope for love. But pride kept her silent. If she spoke, he would twist her words into proof of manipulation. He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne, expensive and cold like winter. His presence filled the space between them, suffocating. "I'll give you what appearances require," he said, his eyes scanning her face like she was a problem to solve. "The rest, don't expect." Sophia turned away, her fingers finding the jeweled pins in her hair. One by one, she removed them, each small click against the dresser sounding too loud in the silence. When the last pin fell, her hair tumbled over her shoulders, and she felt exposed, vulnerable under his gaze. She didn't see him watching her, didn't see the flicker of something in his eyes that wasn't quite hatred. He stepped closer, his breath stirring the loose strands near her ear. Anger drove him forward, anger and the need to prove she was exactly what he thought. He reached for her wrist, his grip firm. Sophia stiffened, her entire body going rigid. A small, sharp intake of breath, fear, pure and undeniable. Ethan froze. That reaction. It wasn't practiced. It wasn't calculated. It was raw terror. "You're shaking," he said, and for the first time that night, surprise cracked through his voice. She turned her face away, but not before he saw it. The truth written in her eyes, in the way her pulse hammered against his fingers. She had never been touched, never been with anyone. This wasn't a woman who had schemed her way into his bed. This was someone terrified, trapped, innocent. The realization hit him like cold water. Everything he had believed, every assumption, every accusation, wrong. He released her wrist slowly, stepping back. His mind raced, reshaping the narrative he had built. If she hadn't wanted this, if she had been forced just as he had been, then who was the real enemy? "Why didn't you say anything?" His voice was quieter now, stripped of its earlier venom. Sophia's shoulders shook, but she didn't cry. "Would you have believed me?" The answer hung between them, heavy and undeniable. No, he wouldn't have. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, tension radiating from every muscle. He had spent the entire day hating her, punishing her for crimes she hadn't committed. And now, standing in the cold light of truth, he didn't know what to feel. "I won't touch you," he said finally, his voice rough. "Not like this. Not when you're afraid." Sophia's eyes lifted to his, searching for deception. But she found only conflict, confusion, and something that might have been shame. "Sleep in the bedroom," he continued, gesturing toward the door. "I'll take the couch." She hesitated, then moved past him, her steps quiet on the marble floor. At the threshold, she paused without looking back. "My father didn't give me a choice," she said softly. "He was drowning, and I was the only lifeline he had. I didn't want your money, Ethan. I wanted my freedom. But I gave it up because he's all I have left." The door closed behind her with a soft click. Ethan stood alone in the vast living room, the city lights blinking below like indifferent stars. He had married a woman he didn't know, hated her for sins she hadn't committed, and now discovered she was as much a prisoner as he was. The whiskey in his hand had gone warm. He set it down untouched. Outside, the night deepened. Inside, the foundations of his certainty had begun to crack. 3 weeks passed like slow-motion torture. They lived as strangers sharing space, polite and distant. In public, they played their roles flawlessly. Ethan's hand at the small of her back, Sophia's practiced smile, Photographers captured what looked like newlywed bliss. In private, silence ruled. Ethan threw himself into work, leaving before dawn, returning after midnight. But he found himself thinking about her at odd moments. The way she sat by the window in the mornings, watching the city wake. The books she read, classics and poetry, their spines cracked from use. The way she never asked him for anything. She haunted his penthouse like a ghost, beautiful and untouchable. One evening, he came home earlier than usual. The apartment was dark except for soft light spilling from the kitchen. He found Sophia there, making tea, her hair pulled back, wearing a simple sweater that made her look younger, softer. "You're home," she said, surprise flickering across her face. "I live here," he replied, but without the edge he usually carried. She poured a second cup without asking, sliding it across the counter toward him. The gesture was small, domestic, unexpected. He took it, their fingers briefly brushing. Neither pulled away immediately. "Why did you agree to this?" The question came out before he could stop it. "Really? Not the version your father told me. The truth." Sophia's hands wrapped around her cup, steam rising between them. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, "Because he's dying." Ethan's chest tightened. "What, lung cancer?" "Stage 4. He has maybe 6 months." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "He spent his whole life building something, and he destroyed it all in 2 years. Bad investments? Worse partners? The shame was killing him faster than the disease. This marriage, it gave him peace, knowing I would be taken care of. That his name might be salvaged through your family's reputation." She looked up, and her eyes were dry but devastated. "So yes, I agreed. Not for money. Not for status. Because my father asked me to, and he's all I have left in this world." Ethan set his cup down, his mind reeling. Every cruel word he had spoken, every cold dismissal, replayed in his memory. He had called her a gold digger, accused her of manipulation, treated her like an enemy when she had been a daughter making an impossible sacrifice. "I didn't know," he said, and the words felt pathetically inadequate. "You didn't ask." No accusation in her tone. Just fact. The air between them shifted, heavy with unspoken apologies. Ethan wanted to say something, anything to bridge the chasm he had created. But before he could speak, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. "What is it?" Sophia asked, seeing the change in his expression. He opened the message. It was from his attorney. A file attachment. Financial records. In a single line of text. "You need to see this." Ethan's hands shook as he scrolled through the documents. Bank transfers, dates, amounts, all pointing to one devastating truth. His business partner Marcus, the man he had trusted for 10 years. The man who had been his friend, had orchestrated everything. The collapse of Sophia's father's business, the debts that forced this marriage, the contracts that trapped them both. Marcus had manipulated them like chess pieces. "Ethan." Sophia's voice sounded far away. He looked up, and she saw something in his face that terrified her. Not anger, not shock, something darker. Betrayal so deep, it had turned to stone. "We've been played," he said, his voice hollow. "Both of us." He explained it all, every detail the documents revealed. How Marcus had sabotaged her father's business to create the crisis. How he had pushed Ethan toward the marriage, claiming it was the only way to secure a crucial merger. How Marcus stood to gain millions from their misery through carefully hidden clauses in their contracts. Sophia's face drained of color. "He killed my father's business on purpose? Worse, he bet on your father's desperation. And mine," Ethan's jaw clenched. "He knew about my past. Knew I would resent you. Knew we would make each other miserable. That was the point. He wanted us distracted, broken, while he dismantled everything from the inside. What do?" Her voice was steady despite the horror in her eyes. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the wedding. This woman who had sacrificed everything for a dying father, who had endured his cruelty in silence, who was stronger than he had ever given her credit for. "We fight back," he said. Together. Something passed between them then. Not forgiveness. Not trust. But a spark of alliance. Two wounded people recognizing each other's pain. Sophia nodded slowly. Tell me what to do. Before Ethan could answer, the elevator chimed. They both froze. No one came to the penthouse unannounced. Security wouldn't allow it. The doors opened, and Marcus stepped out, his smile sharp and predatory. Congratulations on the happy marriage, he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. I thought it was time we had a conversation. All three of us. Ethan moved instinctively, placing himself between Marcus and Sophia, the man he had called friend, the man who had destroyed them both. Get out, Ethan said, his voice deadly quiet. Marcus's smile widened. I don't think so. You see, I have something you'll want to see. Proof that your lovely wife isn't quite the innocent victim she claims to be. He held up a folder, and Sophia's blood turned to ice, because she knew exactly what was inside. The secret she had kept from everyone, the truth that could destroy what little she had left. Marcus dropped the folder on the marble counter, its contents spreading like poison. Photographs, documents, all of them focused on Sophia. Your wife has been busy, Marcus said, circling them slowly. Meeting with investigators, digging into Montgomery Enterprises. Tell me, Sophia, what exactly were you looking for in your husband's private files? Ethan's head snapped toward her, his expression unreadable. What is he talking about? Sophia's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. I was trying to find proof. Proof that someone had sabotaged my father. It's very noble, Marcus sneered. Except you weren't just investigating me. You were building a case against Ethan, too. Insurance, perhaps? Or were you planning your own takeover? That's a lie, Sophia said, but her voice wavered. Marcus pulled out a specific document, sliding it across the counter to Ethan. Is it? Then explain this. An offshore account in your name, Sophia. Opened 2 days before the wedding, funded by a shell corporation. I traced back to a competitor of Montgomery Enterprises. You've been working with Ethan's enemies from the beginning. Ethan stared at the document, his hands gripping the edge of the counter until his knuckles turned white. The account was real. The signatures matched. The evidence was damning. Ethan, I don't know what that is, Sophia said, her voice breaking. I never opened any account. I never worked with anyone against you. Of course you'd say that, Marcus interjected smoothly. But the evidence doesn't lie. She married you to get inside, to destroy you from within, and you fell for it. Ethan's eyes met Sophia's, and she saw the walls rebuilding, brick by brick. The trust they had started to form, crumbling. Get out, Ethan said to Marcus, his voice flat. Gladly. But first, know this. In 3 days, the board votes on your position as CEO. With this evidence, they'll remove you. Montgomery Enterprises will be mine, and there's nothing you can do about it. Marcus straightened his jacket, his smile victorious. Enjoy your last days of power. The elevator doors closed behind him, leaving devastation in his wake. Sophia reached for Ethan's arm. Please, you have to believe me. I don't know anything about that account. He's framing me. Ethan pulled away, his expression carved from ice. Don't touch me, Ethan, please. I was starting to believe you, he said, and his voice held a pain that cut deeper than anger. I actually thought maybe we were both victims. That maybe we could fix this together. But you played me. Just like she did. Who? Sophia's desperation cracked through. Who are you talking about? My ex-fiancée. 5 years ago. She told me she loved me. She'll let me plan our future. And then I found out she'd been working with my competitor the entire time, using me to steal secrets, to sabotage deals. When she had everything she needed, she left. Married him 3 months later. His hands shook and he clenched them into fists. You're just another version of her. Better actress, maybe. But the same script? I'm not her, Sophia said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I'm not anyone but myself. A woman trying to save her dying father. A woman who gave up everything for a man who hates her. I haven't betrayed you, Ethan. I swear it. Your swearing means nothing. He turned away, staring out at the city. Pack your things. You'll move to the guest wing. We'll maintain appearances until after the board meeting. Then I want a divorce. If you push me away now, Marcus wins, Sophia said, her voice gaining strength. Can't you see? This is exactly what he wants. To isolate you. To make you doubt the one person who might actually be on your side. You're not on my side. You're on your own side. Everyone is? He walked toward his study, then paused at the door. I'll have my attorney start the paperwork. The door closed, leaving Sophia alone in the cold light of the penthouse. She stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, her heart shattering into pieces too small to gather. Then, slowly, she straightened, wiped her eyes, and made a decision. If Ethan wouldn't believe her, she would prove it herself. Sophia stood frozen, Ethan's hand still on her arm, his touch gentle now instead of possessive. The morning light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Why would I stay? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You made it clear what you think of me. Ethan's grip loosened, but he didn't let go. I was wrong. Wrong about what? That I'm a manipulator? A gold digger? Another woman who would betray you? Her voice cracked. You believed Marcus over me without hesitation. You saw evidence and assumed the worst because that's what you wanted to see. You're right. The admission seemed to cost him. I've spent 5 years building walls, convincing myself that trust was weakness, that everyone had an agenda. And then you walked into my life. And I wanted so badly for you to be the villain I expected that I ignored everything that said otherwise. He stepped closer, and she saw the exhaustion in his face, the regret carved into every line. You gave up your freedom for your father, he continued. You endured my cruelty in silence. You never asked me for anything. And when I needed saving, you risked everything to prove my innocence. You're nothing like her. You're nothing like anyone I've ever known. Sophia's eyes burned with unshed tears. That doesn't change what happened. You looked at me and saw your ex-fiancé. How do I know you won't do it again? How do I know that the next time someone presents evidence against me, you won't believe them? You don't. His honesty cut through the air. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, that I won't let my past poison my judgment, but I can promise to try. To fight against every instinct that tells me to push you away. To choose trust over fear. I don't want promises, Sophia said, pulling her arm free. I want truth. So here's mine. I fell in love with you, Ethan. His breath caught, and she continued before he could speak. Not with your money or your power. Not with the idea of you. With the man who looked broken on our wedding night when he realized I was afraid. With the man who slept on the couch instead of forcing himself on a terrified bride. With the man who reads late at night when he thinks no one is watching. Who touches his mother's picture when he's stressed. Who leaves early for work because being home reminds him how lonely he is. Tears streamed down her face now, unstoppable. I fell in love with a man who's been hurt so badly he forgot how to let anyone close. And I hate that I love you. Because you don't love me back, you can't even trust me. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Ethan moved. Not away, but closer, closing the distance between them until he could cup her face in his hands. His touch, impossibly gentle. I'm terrified, he said, his voice rough, because I think I've been falling for you too. And that scares me more than losing my company, more than facing Marcus, more than anything. Because if I let myself love you and you leave, I don't think I'll survive it. I'm not her, Sophia whispered. I won't leave. I know. He rested his forehead against hers. You proved that today. You could have walked away. Let Marcus destroy me. Taken your freedom. But you stayed. You fought for me when I didn't deserve it. His thumbs brushed away her tears. I don't know how to do this. How to trust. How to love without fear. But if you'll be patient with me, if you'll stay, I want to try. I want to learn how to be the man you deserve. Sophia's hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. What if we can't fix what's broken? Then we build something new. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I can't erase the past 3 weeks. Can't take back the things I said. But I can promise that from this moment forward, I'll fight for us. For you, will you give me that chance? She searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. But she saw only raw vulnerability, a man offering his scarred heart with shaking hands. At one condition, she said. No more sleeping on the couch. No more separate rooms. If we do this, we do it together. Really together. Something shifted in his expression, warmth replacing the ice. Together, kissed her then, soft and searching. A question more than a demand. Sophia answered by wrapping her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, pouring every ounce of hope and fear and love into that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers again. Your father, he said softly. How much time does he have? The doctor said 6 months. That was 5 weeks ago, and we'll make them the best weeks he has left. I'll arrange for the best care. We'll visit him together. And when the time comes, you won't face it alone. Fresh tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks, but these were different. Not grief, but gratitude. 6 months later, they stood together in a cemetery under autumn trees, their hands intertwined. Sophia's father had passed peacefully, knowing his daughter was loved and protected. He had lived long enough to see her genuine smile, to watch Ethan hold her like she was precious. In the end, he told her he was grateful for the arranged marriage. Not because it saved his reputation, but because it gave her something he never could. A partner who chose to love her every single day. Now, in their penthouse that had transformed from museum to home, Sophia stood by the windows watching the city wake. But this time, she wasn't alone. Ethan's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. What are you thinking? He asked. That I hated this place at first, she admitted. It felt like a prison. And now, she turned in his arms, smiling up at him. Now it feels like home. Outside Manhattan glittered in the morning sun, towers rising like promises against the sky. Inside, 2 wounded people had found what they never expected. Not just love, but redemption. Not just partnership, but healing. The marriage that began with hate had transformed into something neither could have imagined. Something real. Ethan kissed her softly, and Sophia kissed him back, knowing that some stories don't start with love, but the best ones, the ones worth fighting for, end with it. The end over. The next 2 days, Sophia barely slept. She used every resource she had, called in favors from her father's old contacts, hired a private investigator with money she had saved before the marriage, dug through files, transactions, anything that might prove Marcus had fabricated the evidence. Ethan avoided her completely. They existed as ghosts in the same space, never speaking, never looking at each other. On the morning of the board meeting, Sophia found what she needed. A digital trail showing Marcus had created the offshore account using forged documents. Timestamps proving the competitor's involvement had been manufactured. Evidence that would expose everything, but there was a problem. To present it to the board, she needed access to the meeting. And Ethan's assistant had made it clear she wasn't welcome. Sophia stood in the bedroom, the evidence clutched in her hands, and faced an impossible choice. She could force her way into that boardroom, humiliate Ethan in front of his colleagues, destroy any remaining shred of dignity in their marriage. Or she could walk away. Give him the divorce he wanted, let Marcus win. She thought of her father, lying in a hospital bed, believing his daughter was safe and cared for. She thought of Ethan, wounded and broken by betrayal, unable to trust anyone. She thought of the life she had wanted, before duty and sacrifice had claimed it. Then she called a car. When she arrived at Montgomery Enterprises, security tried to stop her. She pushed past them, heels clicking against marble as she ran toward the boardroom. Ethan's assistant blocked her path. Mrs. Montgomery, you can't go in there, watch me. Sophia threw open the doors. 20 faces turned toward her. Ethan's among them, his expression shocked, then furious. Marcus sat at the far end of the table, his smile freezing. I apologize for the interruption, Sophia said, her voice clear and unwavering. But you need to see this before you vote. She placed the evidence on the table, explained every detail, showed the timestamps, the forged signatures, the trail of manipulation. The board members leaned forward, their expressions shifting from annoyance to shock to fury. Marcus stood abruptly. This is absurd. She's desperate, fabricating evidence to save herself. The federal investigators I contacted this morning will determine that, Sophia said calmly. They're very interested in your shell corporations, Marcus, and your illegal stock manipulations. I believe they'll be here within the hour. The color drained from Marcus's face. He looked at Ethan, then at the board, then back at Sophia. Without another word, he grabbed his briefcase and ran. Security stopped him at the elevators. The boardroom erupted in chaos. But Sophia didn't stay to witness it. She had done what she came to do. Prove the truth. Saved Ethan's company. Now she would save herself. She walked out of the building, the morning sun bright against her face, and didn't look back. When Ethan found her, she was already at the penthouse, her bags packed, standing by the door. Why did you do that? He asked, his voice raw. Because it was the right thing to do, she said simply. Because you didn't deserve to lose everything because of someone else's lies. You exposed yourself. Your connection to the investigators. Marcus's lawyers will come after you. Let them. She picked up her suitcase. I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of sacrificing myself for men who don't see me. I saved your company, Ethan. Now I'm saving myself. She moved toward the door, but he caught her arm. Stay one word. But it held everything.